Brendan Fraser was everywhere in the late 1990s. Then he vanished. For years, nobody knew why. Tabloids mocked his weight. Hollywood stopped calling. Fans assumed he just faded out. But in 2018, Fraser finally told the truth. He said a powerful Hollywood executive assaulted him at a luncheon in 2003. He said it changed everything inside him. He said he went home and cried. But that was only part of the story. There were surgeries nobody heard about, a divorce that nearly bankrupted him, and a secret he carried for 15 years before saying a single word. At 57, Brendan Fraser has finally admitted what we all suspected: the fall was never his fault. The rootless childhood. Brendan Fraser came into the world on December 3, 1968, in Indianapolis, Indiana. But even that clear starting point never gave him a true sense of home. Born to Canadian parents, his father worked as a foreign service officer for Canada's Office of Tourism. That one job shaped Brendan's entire childhood. Every few years, the family packed up again. Before he turned 18, they had lived in Eureka, California, Seattle, Ottawa, Detroit, The Hague, London, Rome, and Switzerland. While most kids grew up with one neighborhood, Brendan learned how to walk into rooms full of strangers and begin again. Later in life, he would call it a life of travel and cultural immersion. But as a child, it felt different. New schools, new rules, new accents, and the same uneasy feeling, over and over. One day you knew where everything was. Then suddenly you did not. That gave him something valuable later as an actor. It sharpened his empathy and taught him to observe. But as a boy, it left him feeling rootless. Born in the United States, he was never fully American. He had Canadian roots and dual citizenship, but was never fully settled there either. That in-between feeling followed him everywhere. By the time he was a teenager, he had switched schools again and again. That constant uprooting taught him how to blend in without ever fully relaxing. Finding the theater. In the middle of all that movement, something steady finally appeared. During the family's time in London in the mid-1970s, Brendan found the theater. He was only 6 to 8 years old when West End shows first caught his imagination. He saw productions like Oliver, The Mousetrap, and Jesus Christ Superstar. The stage pulled him in with a force ordinary life could not match. In a childhood filled with abrupt departures, those dark theaters became a refuge. He sat still, watched stories unfold, and for a few hours the world made sense. There is something fitting in the fact that Oliver, a story about a child without a true place to belong, left such an impression on him. It touched the same lonely spot he had been carrying for years. The moving also made him a linguistic chameleon. In Ottawa, he picked up French through immersion schooling. In The Hague, he absorbed conversational Dutch. By the time he was still very young, he was already switching between languages without much thought. That trained him to notice detail and understand that identity is often more fluid than it looks. The Olympic legacy. There was also a family story in the background that carried its own pressure. Brendan's maternal uncle, George Patrick Généreux, had won Canada's only gold medal at the 1952 Helsinki Olympics in trap shooting. He was just 17 at the time, the youngest Canadian Olympic champion of his era, and later became a physician. For young Brendan, hearing those stories mattered. Here was a family member who had stood alone and found a way to be unforgettable. That legacy stayed with him, giving the drifting boy an example of grit and discipline under pressure. When the time came for formal schooling, he attended Upper Canada College in Toronto and graduated in 1987. On paper, it looked polished and elite, but Brendan later described it in far rougher terms, a place that could feel like Lord of the Flies. Boys formed harsh pecking orders. Newcomers were tested. For someone who had spent years being the new kid again and again, that environment sharpened the survival instincts he had been building his whole life. The breakthrough. After graduating, he went to Seattle and studied at Cornish College of the Arts, completing his acting degree in 1990. The child who had spent years stepping into new cultures had stumbled into the perfect profession. He headed to New York in April 1990, then toward Los Angeles. The old instability of his childhood had become momentum. He was used to the leap before the landing. That leap led to his first film role in Dogfight in 1991. He was 22. The part was Tiny Sailor Number 1. He wore a sailor uniform, had one small line, and got thrown into a pinball machine. That role got him his Screen Actors Guild card. Even the credit carried a strange detail. His name appeared as Brendan Fraser because of a spelling mistake. Still, it was a beginning. Years later, he could still recite that one line on television. Then, in May 1992, Encino Man arrived. Brendan Fraser became impossible to ignore. He played Link, a frozen caveman thawed out in modern California. He threw himself into it with full physical commitment, wild energy, and fearless sincerity. The movie was goofy, but audiences loved it. It earned many times its budget back and turned Fraser into a breakout star. He was funny without mocking the character. He looked ridiculous and fully committed to looking ridiculous. That is much harder than it sounds. Later that same year, he took the lead in School Ties and showed a completely different side. He played David Green, a Jewish quarterback who hides his faith at an elite 1950s prep school. The role demanded strength, restraint, and quiet dignity. He carried the film with real seriousness opposite young Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. He was not just a physically gifted comic actor. He had emotional weight. In 1997 came George of the Jungle. Bright, silly, and hugely successful, he played George with total physical confidence, performing most of his own stunts and getting hurt more than once doing it. That willingness to use his body was becoming a double-edged sword. It made the work thrilling. It also started taking something from him. Then, Gods and Monsters in 1998, opposite Ian McKellen, proved again that his career was not built only on charm or muscle. He had real dramatic range. The Mummy years. Then The Mummy arrived in 1999 and turned him into a genuine megastar. The movie hit theaters with big-budget sets, monsters, comedy, and old-fashioned adventure energy. Fraser was right at the center as Rick O'Connell. He was funny without being smug, heroic without being stiff. The movie exploded at the box office and became one of Universal's biggest hits of the decade. In one summer, Brendan Fraser moved from well-known actor to full global movie star. A huge part of why the performance worked was how much of himself he physically put into it. He insisted on doing his own stunts, including rope work, horse dragging, and fight sequences. During a hanging scene played for dark comedy, the setup went wrong, and he was actually choked unconscious. He blacked out and had to be checked medically. That captures something important about him. He kept pushing. He kept putting his body on the line because he believed in giving the performance everything. The Mummy Returns in 2001 earned even more money. It also introduced Dwayne Johnson as the Scorpion King. For Johnson, it became a launching point. For Fraser, it was another chapter in a career that now seemed unstoppable. At the same time, he kept proving he could do more than action-adventure. In The Quiet American in 2002, he gave what many still consider one of the best performances of his career. Crash in 2004 added another prestige title. By the early 2000s, Fraser was among the highest-paid actors in Hollywood. But the same years that made him famous were quietly breaking him down. The Hidden Collapse. In 1997, while filming George of the Jungle, he met actress Afton Smith. They started dating, and by 1998, they were married. Soon they had 3 sons, Griffin in 1998, Holden in 2002, and Leland in 2004. Fraser kept that part of his world unusually quiet. That quiet life mattered to him more than people realized. It showed up in small things like rescuing a silver horse named Peaches in Mexico in 2015, because he believed its calm nature could help his eldest son, Griffin, who is autistic. He went through enormous effort to bring that horse home from Durango to upstate New York. But then, in December 2007, the news broke Fraser and Smith had separated. The divorce was finalized in 2009. Then, the financial details came out. Under the agreement, Fraser was required to pay about $900,000 a year in combined alimony and child support. The problem was that Fraser's career was already starting to slow down. By 2013, Keeping up with that agreement meant they needed to earn roughly $2 million a year before taxes just to stay afloat. That pressure exploded into a court battle in 2013. Fraser went to court to ask for his payments to be reduced. He said his movie income had dried up. According to his filings, he was using credit cards and loans just to meet the payments. Smith pushed back hard, accusing him of hiding money. The image of two people parting as friends gave way to something much uglier. Their legal fight became public, bitter, and exhausting. Fraser's worst years were never caused by one thing alone. They came from several disasters landing on top of each other. The assault, one of the most painful, stayed hidden for a long time. In 2018, Fraser revealed that back in 2003, at a Hollywood Foreign Press Association luncheon at the Beverly Hills Hotel, former HFPA President Philip Burke assaulted him. Fraser said Burke reached to shake his hand, then grabbed him in a deeply violating way that left him shocked, sick, and almost in tears. Fraser said he felt like a little kid. He pulled away, left the event, and tried to bury the whole thing. But buried pain does not stay buried. It settles into the body and the mind. Fraser later said the incident fed a slow withdrawal from Hollywood and a spiral into depression and anxiety. He started to pull back. He questioned whether he still belonged in the industry. Just weeks ago, in March 2026, Fraser spoke again about that period in a candid interview on CBS Mornings. "I didn't leave Hollywood," he said. "Hollywood left me, and I had to make peace with that before I could ever come back." He also revealed that he still struggles with trust. "When someone reaches out to shake my hand, I still feel that split second of hesitation. That's the scar." The physical toll. While he was carrying that emotional wound, his body was also breaking down. Years of stunts had taken a brutal toll. He underwent multiple surgeries, a back operation in 2003, more spinal work later, a partial knee replacement, and vocal cord procedures. At one point, he described a failed spinal operation that had to be redone. The man audiences remembered as the athletic star of The Mummy was now living with pain, recovery, and physical damage that does not disappear when the cameras stop. So when people looked at Brendan Fraser between roughly 2008 and 2013 and asked what happened, they were seeing only the surface. He was fighting a draining court battle. He was living under heavy financial obligations. He was carrying trauma from the assault. He was recovering from surgeries. He was trying to stay present as a father for a son with special needs, and all the while, his career was shrinking. At the same time, the public turned cruel. Fraser's weight gain became tabloid material. Paparazzi photos from around 2012 to 2014 were used in mocking headlines. His body became a joke to people who had no idea what it had been through. Those photos were treated as punchlines, even though behind them was a man recovering from surgery after surgery. His upstate New York farm became a refuge. About an hour north of Manhattan, it gave him room to breathe. There were horses, open space, and distance from the constant pressure of Hollywood. This was not a glamorous retreat. It was survival. How'd it turn? In 2018, Fraser's long-hidden pain was pulled into public view through a major profile in GQ. He spoke openly about the 2003 assault. The timing mattered. This came only months after the Weinstein scandal had exploded, when Hollywood was finally being forced to confront abuse. Fraser's confession hit people hard because it shattered an old assumption. Here was a man famous and physically imposing on screen, admitting he had been violated, frightened, and deeply changed by it. Then came Darren Aronofsky's The Whale. Aronofsky had spent more than a year searching for the right actor to play Charlie, a 600-pound reclusive English teacher. At first, he did not even expect a big-name actor to want it. Then, Fraser sent in a tape. Fraser later called the role a creative lifeline. When The Whale premiered at the Venice Film Festival on September 4, 2022, the audience gave Fraser a standing ovation that lasted 6 full minutes. He was visibly emotional. He cried. He shook. The moment spread online instantly, and people responded not just to the performance, but to what the moment seemed to mean. Years of pain, dismissal, and quiet struggle had suddenly met a wave of recognition. He won the Academy Award for Best Actor in March 2023. His tearful acceptance speech became one of the most watched Oscar moments in years. That's what he is now. At 57, Brendan Fraser is not hiding anymore. In early 2026, he starred in the thriller Eden, directed by Ron Howard, which premiered at Sundance to strong reviews. He also recently signed on to voice a lead role in a major animated adaptation of The Wild Robot, set for release in late 2026. In an April 2026 interview with Vanity Fair, Fraser reflected on his journey. "I spent so many years feeling like I had to apologize for existing. I don't feel that anymore. The work is the work. The rest is just noise." He has also become an outspoken advocate for survivors of assault in the entertainment industry. At a Screen Actors Guild panel in February 2026, he said, "The silence nearly killed me. I won't let another young actor feel that alone." Fraser has also reconciled with his ex-wife in recent years. Sources close to the family say the legal battles are behind them, and they co-parent their 3 sons amicably. His eldest, Griffin, is now 27 and living independently with support. Fraser credits the horses on his farm for helping Griffin find calm. "What we suspected. The man so many people thought was gone is standing there again. And this time, the applause is not stopping." At 57, Brendan Fraser has admitted what we all suspected, that the Vanishing Act was never a choice. It was a survival mechanism. And coming back has required more courage than leaving ever did. He is no longer the funny, fearless star of The Mummy. He is something rarer. He is a man who was broken by Hollywood and refused to stay broken. Subscribe to keep uncovering the truth behind the legends. Thanks for watching.